Hey there, and welcome to our first podcast for the Alternative Protein Show. This is Alex.
And this is Diana.
And we're here with you from Brandfirst. We're a creative agency located in New Jersey, and we're excited to be the official design partners of the Alternative Protein Show.
Yep, the show is happening in San Francisco from January 15th through the 17th, and the show itself is happening on the 16th.
Right, nestled in between is a pre-event workshop, followed by a post-show VC meetup day.
Very exciting stuff. And seeing that this is our first podcast, just wanted to give you a little bit of background about Brandfirst. As Alex mentioned, we're a creative agency located in New Jersey. We've been in business for 33 years, and we are a woman-owned company. Our sweet spot is really in food and beverage, and we specialize in brand strategy and positioning, identity development, package design, websites, really all things branding. Our goal is to help companies tell their story in a way that truly reaches people.
Today we're going to talk with Rusty Schwartz, who is a lifelong entrepreneur and founder of Kitchentown, a food startup incubator that supports innovators and early-stage food companies by providing scale-up facilities, industry expertise, access to capital, and acceleration. Kitchentown's mission is to support positive changes to our food system by empowering innovators and entrepreneurs through community building, strategic partnering, and optimization. Recently, Rusty has led a major effort to redefine how food startups and large food companies can benefit from collaborations to accelerate product innovation and commercialization through partnering.
Thanks for joining us, Rusty.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
So, Rusty, to start things off, can you give us a little background about yourself? Tell us how you got involved with food and starting Kitchentown.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life. My first company, I think, was when I was about 12, when I decided to buy an old used candy machine, I think, and stick it in my garage. And I think that was the first actual company I had. My parents shut that down pretty quick and said, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. So I have found my way back to food. But kidding aside, this is really the first food company that I've had. The other companies I had have been all in consumer products, but not in food. So I kind of found my way to food about 7 years ago or so, when I just started really looking at it carefully and learned about food and learned about the cycles of food and where it's coming from, and so that just became an interest, and I learned about it, and in learning about it, I just started working with small food companies, kind of in the trenches, helping to write business plans, and that's where I saw the need, and so I decided this would be a great thing to do. A startup of startups could not be more fun. And food is even better, and especially in a place where there's a lot of work to be done. So it offered challenges and sort of a suite of things that made sense for me.
So really what Kitchentown is for you is that candy machine, and your parents can't do anything about it.
Good call, Alex.
So Rusty, I understand that Kitchentown is a gold sponsor of the Alternative Protein Show, right?
We are.
And DSM is involved as well?
Yeah, absolutely. DSM is a very close partner of ours. They're obviously a nutrition company, one of the largest nutrition companies in the world. So that means vitamins and minerals and enzymes. And a lot of the companies that we work with are focused on functional ingredients like that, and their products are more and more focused on nutrition. So they're a significant partner of ours, and we're thrilled to be working with them with respect to the Alternative Protein Show.
How'd you get involved in the first place?
Well, Kitchentown is all about impact and what we can do to help startups that are working to create different types of impacts in our food system, right? And so alternative proteins are certainly one of the major areas that we're focused on, and as are many startups and scientists, innovators. And so it's a big area of focus, and so we're on top of the opportunities to converge and collaborate with other folks that are similarly minded. And the Alternative Protein Show is going to be, we all expect to be a great opportunity for everybody to network and meet each other and find ways of collaborating.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So Rusty, recently I was on the Kitchentown website and I noticed 3 words: connect, create, and scale. Can you explain how that encapsulates what Kitchentown is?
Sure. Well, creating is the beginning. That's what we're all doing in all of our particular ways, right? And for sure, we're speaking to that group of entrepreneurs that are out there and scientists that are out there, thinking about new ideas and again, trying to improve the food system. So it begins with being creative, and for us, it's all about supporting that creative spirit. And we think that it's the entrepreneurs that really are in the trenches doing that creative work. So creating is number one. That's where it all starts for all of us. And then connecting is really all about how do we collaborate together? How do for startups it's about finding those connections. Who will be those partners that will make this their individual project and their greater mission succeed. That's really what that's about. So these are broad terms, right, that represent the significant parts of growing a business and being impactful in general, and networking all together. And then scaling, of course, is about being about fulfilling that opportunity to be impactful, right? So if it's something that can scale, it can be impactful. So yeah, that's sort of that's the reason for those 3 words. That's the meaning behind it.
It's really interesting because so many entrepreneurs have a notion of what they want to do. And then there's actually not only the intellectual task, but the physical task of being able to bring something to market.
Yeah, I mean, after things start, once we engage with companies, there are so many challenges along the way and practicalities, and there's so much information that people don't know about. So that's where sort of connecting and scaling is. Those are simple words to say, but behind them are a ton of work, especially for small teams.
So, Rusty, currently your facility is in California, and you started roughly 5 years ago, I believe. And within that time, almost doubled your facility. Is that correct?
That's right. We started with the main facility, which is the scale-up production facility, and built that with startups that would scale in mind. So that's what differentiates it from other types of shared facilities. This one, has forklifts and pallets of ingredients coming in and pallets going out. So we can keep companies there for 1 to 2 years. The idea is to scale them, help them scale to $1 million to $2 million in revenue. So they're there for a while, and they're taking advantage of that facility. So that's the foundational piece of Kitchentown, is that scale up commercialization piece. And then over time, we've added to that an education department. We do a lot of events. We partner with a lot of other folks, whether it's universities or corporates, but all sort of with the startup in view, right, through that lens of the startup. So, understanding that a food startup needs all of this, support and networking and connection to experts and skilled people who can help along the way. So that's as we've scaled up and doubled in size just because the needs of the startups require that.
Sure. Wasn't the original location a Danish cookie factory?
Yeah, it was. So it's, we're in the Bay Area and real estate is extraordinarily expensive, and it's really hard to find anything industrial because technology kind of takes up that space, and you've got a lot of venture folks and there's a lot of money. So yeah, it's tough. And startups, food startups in particular, they're not capitalized. And so anyway, yeah, we found this Danish cookie company that was, kind of, they wanted to sell the company. And, so obviously it had some infrastructure already there because it was a food company. So yeah, we jumped on that. We bought a cookie company in order to begin this project.
Such cool history. And I also hear that you have a cafe where you feature a lot of the startups you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's become a really big part of the program. So having a cafe restaurant allows us to serve up a lot of the products that are being made in the back and experiment with them, having our own chefs that can work on those, work with each of the startups and create products. And yeah, and then just allowing the public to come in and see what's going on. Actually, the way that is set up, you walk in the front door and you're in the cafe, and then there are huge glass walls that separate the cafe from the main floor of the working space. So you can literally see everything that's going on from that cafe. So it's become a great place for the public to see things, and you really feel the energy of what's going on back there.
We're going to have to stop by for sure.
Yes.
Definitely.
So, Rusty, if you look at the startup scene 5 years ago, I would imagine a lot of the players in the alternative protein show hadn't even started yet.
Yeah, there's no question when we started 5 years ago, we were just kind of hitting the beginning of all of this. I mean, we saw a lot of food startups coming in, but it was, the focus was a little bit more on local and sustainability. And the first of the plant-based companies were just coming up. Hungry Roots, a good example. They were one of the first companies at Kitchentown, and they were a vegan meal kit company. And, early on, they were just kind of serving up spiralized vegetables in different versions of that. But they've really grown. They're probably our most successful company to date. They've just raised $30 million. So, yeah, I mean, the wave kind of hit, and alternative proteins and vegan options have all been, a big part of that mix.
Yeah.
So yeah, things have definitely changed a lot. And we're just seeing better and better concepts and more companies coming through that have, brilliant ideas and they're brilliant founders. And that's the core of all of this, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is Hungry Roots still at your facility?
No, Hungry Roots scaled out after about a year and a half.
Gotcha. That's cool. And I was wondering, how many companies do you have working out of your facility usually at a time?
So in the facility, there are about 30 companies at any given time. And then outside of the facility, there are literally hundreds more that we're working with. But they just don't happen to be in the facility. So that's what happens. Yeah. The companies come in, they build up their business, and then they scale out, and then we bring in the next one.
Yeah, it's kind of like you give birth to the companies, you deal with them in their infancy, and then when they get older, they still know how to call mom.
Yeah, that's right. And then and with others, it's like, we heard you've got a long lost uncle. Call Rusty at Kitchentown. They'll hook you up.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, I understand that Kitchentown has an underlying philosophy of flexibility and adaptation. I was wondering if you could give us an example of a startup that maybe came to you and needed to quickly adapt, and how you were able to flex with those needs.
Yeah, I mean, we work with companies in a lot of different ways. Because every company brings their own challenges. Some companies, the challenge is literally the production. They've invented a product that just can't be produced. Like the Organic Pantry is a good example. They make a cracker out of flax seeds, and if you've got a flaxseed dough and you don't have any binder, you don't have any flour in it, it's super sticky and it doesn't extrude out of a typical extrusion machine. So we have to start, finding people who are experts at modifying, certain types of equipment and certain co-packers that will even entertain the idea of changing some of their equipment to work with a particular product. So this becomes a challenge at scale for a lot of companies today that are, they're just uncompromising in the ingredients that they're going to use. So there's a lot in operations in particular. We've recently started formulating for a lot of companies. So we have food scientists on staff now. And same thing, when someone comes to us and they say, okay, it's got to be these 5 ingredients and you can't add any more, then, these are very difficult problems sometimes. So we encounter a real wide range of issues as people come through.
How do you deal with the issue of intellectual property? I would imagine that many startups have visionary ideas that are proprietary. You have a food scientist on staff at around 30 other companies. How do you deal with that?
We've never had issues at Kitchentown. We're lucky we live in a place where collaboration and open innovation are a part of our culture here in the Bay Area. So, people are learning from each other, not stealing from each other. Everyone's got their head down. Everyone's got a concept that they're really working hard on. So, we don't have that issue. That said, we try not to have direct competitors working in the same space or at the same time. So, you do have to have sort of a Chinese wall situation where, you make sure that people aren't working on exactly the same things at the same time. That includes our staff too. But no, we've never had an issue around intellectual property. When we get into our partnership programs, so where people are partnering up with corporations, NDAs are signed, and you don't disclose your IP immediately to corporate partners. You hold that, and so we train people on that, and we're constantly referring people to attorneys that deal with that day in, day out. So people are counseled and mentored around those issues. So it's just part of the deal.
And speaking of that, it's really cool how you partner up startups with corporations. So how does that work?
The way it kind of began was, we're working with startups and a lot of them. And so a lot of the corporates started coming around to see, well, how are these startups, beating us up so badly? Part of it was that, right? They're, in aggregate, all, startups are killing it in the market. They're replacing a lot of the legacy products and brands on the shelves. So there were a lot of people looking at this new way of innovating. And then I think people started thinking about, and we did too, like, how can we collaborate? How can we work together? Corporates have tremendous expertise. They have process engineers and packaging engineers, and they have scientists, in their particular categories that their brands are involved in. And so, that kind of expertise is actually hard to find on the open market. We saw an opportunity, immediately that, well, look, if we can hook up these startups with these corporates, it could really accelerate the process and help the startups to avoid mistakes. And so there was sort of a natural opportunity. Now, that's theoretical, and then trying it out is a different story. But now we have a couple of years of experience doing it, and we've made a lot of headway. We have, quite a few companies that have had great experiences. It sort of depends on the company, on the corporate. But we found a lot of these companies to be really interested and honestly interested in working with these smaller companies, and they don't steal their ideas. And they make good partners. So it's been good.
So what are some of the challenges that Kitchentown has undergone in its growth?
the beginnings of this were really seeing the gap and seeing the need that didn't exist at the time, and still, is difficult to find, and that's infrastructure for scaling up food startups that want to have impact and want to grow. So there's a big gap there where, in the Bay Area, I mean, you have such a huge infrastructure around technology, but that just hasn't existed in food. But it's coming. It's definitely coming because the need is there. There's a focus on it now. I mean, you can kind of feel it, right? You've seen this big wave hitting, and so there are more investors. There are more independent contractors. People are leaving big firms and joining small firms because it's more exciting and it's more impactful. So yeah, I mean, this was sort of all something that we saw coming, and I've just sort of, I mean, we're a startup too. So part of a startup is just not dying, right? And so, and finding ways to continue to grow and iterate and provide value. And that's sort of the way it's been for Kitchentown.
Right. And you've helped a number of companies. I think on your website it says 421 now.
Yeah, it's probably more than that. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of companies we engage with now on a lot of different levels, and it's amazing. And I mean, every day is kind of like Christmas, right? Somebody calls you and they got this new idea, and you think you've heard it all until the next day when you hear about something new. Most recently, I mean, this last week we started working with a company that's working on a cure for cancer. They have discovered that cancer cells require certain amounts of nutrition, certain types of nutrition and amino acids in order to be as efficient and grow as fast as they do. But that if you deprive them of that nutrition and those amino acids, then they slow and eventually die. And so this is truly food as medicine. It's a diet, ultimately, that's going to be created. And so being able to work with a company like that is incredible. And that was, and then tomorrow, literally, it'll be something else. So it's just tons of amazing ideas. And that company, by the way, Filtracine, what they've discovered is that you can't have meat. I mean, you literally cannot have any animal protein. So, and we'll have them at our table at the Alternative Protein Show and be able to talk even more about that.
Wow, that is amazing.
That's very interesting. So one of the companies that I'm familiar with is called Regrained. I know that you did work with them.
Yeah, Regrained's a great example of phenomenal founders. These were guys who in college were, making their own beer and found that they had all this excess material, and what could they do with it? They started making bread, and that led to this company called Regrained that they started. So they've been making their products. They decided to make a product first, a bar, an energy bar, and so they recover these spent grains from bigger microbreweries, and they dry those grains and mill them and make them into an energy bar to tell their story at retail. But they're actually an ingredient company. I mean, their ideas to and what they're doing is creating a process for doing that on site at microbreweries and solving a big food waste problem. So we've been working with them for a few years now. They are just scaling out of Kitchentown, so they've gotten their volumes up on their bars to have those co-packed, and they've developed some equipment, drying capabilities with the USDA and other partnerships, and so they're just about getting out of Kitchentown, but we'll continue to work with them. One of our partners, Barilla, we're able to set them up with them, and they've invested in Regrained, and they've brought them out to Parma, Italy, to work on different baking applications using their grains. So that's been one of those relationships that's gone so well, and they've been super successful, and we expect them to do great things.
Awesome. Yeah, just the fact that they're helping with the food waste problem is terrific. A lot of the companies that I know you choose to work with at Kitchentown help with environmental issues. There was a company helping to clean up the oceans, I believe, called Drop Water. Can you tell us about them a little bit?
Yeah. So Dropwater is another super exciting company. They are sort of packaging engineers at heart, from Cal Poly, and they've developed a compostable water bottle. And what they're doing is they're basically making these vending machines that allow people to select a flavored or nutritional water. And these vending machines are in high traffic airports, where a lot of people are buying plastic bottles, right? And so they're an amazing company. The robotics inside these vending machines are incredible, and so there's a lot of science involved, and yeah, the impact around sustainability is huge. So we're super excited to be working with them. And then we introduced them to DSM, who I mentioned earlier, the nutrition company, and DSM is working to really create some really cool functional beverages around hydration and immunity and the type of things that you want when you're on an airplane.
I think it's really interesting that Kitchentown is championing companies that are using technology in a new way with food to reutilize underutilized things, as an example. And that way they're having an impact on the environment, which is really just outstanding.
Absolutely. So that is the filter that we put on our program. And people ask all the time, so how do you choose, who comes into Kitchentown? And obviously we're really looking for, first and foremost, impact. What kind of impact can you have? How will you change the world for the better? And so we're looking for not only ideas, but even more importantly, it's really about the founder. Is this someone who is passionate about what they're doing, mission driven, has a clear vision for what they want to accomplish, and they may pivot. And the first idea might not work, but they'll stick to it. So we're really looking for those people and those innovative ideas.
How many startups come in with just an idea and no physical concept of how to get it off the ground, Rusty?
Yeah, so we do get a lot of calls from companies or entrepreneurs or innovators that have an idea and they want to know, okay, what's it going to be like being a food company, or should I do this, or what are the next steps to do this? So it's super common, and we do have a lot in place to work with those kinds of people. We have an education program, so we're constantly running workshops, blind tastings, different how-tos, about, so you want to be a food company, here's what it's going to be like, and, operationally and from a food safety standpoint. So people really do have a sense of this before they jump in, because food is different. It may seem simple, because we all eat food and we all like it, but running a food company is complex. So yeah, we definitely help with people. And then when it comes to the specific ideas, we do encourage people to slow it down, to not go to market quickly, to really think about consumer need. Is this something that people are going to really want? I know you've been thinking about this forever, and you're obsessed with it or whatever, but let's take a step back. So we do have programs around human-centered design and design thinking, and workshops like that where people can really think about that and make sure that when they do decide to pursue it, they're pursuing it in a very thoughtful way, and with the hope that they will be more successful.
So you literally can take it from conception of an idea to execution.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's most of this, I suppose, is a DIY program with mentorship and help and resources there for you. On the other hand, we also, have begun to offer more and more services. So, because there are some people who just say, okay, great, but, I'm not a food scientist, and I need to develop formulations. And so how can you help me with that? So that's an area where we do actually offer real services. I mean, we offer a lot of real services, but that's a particular area at the beginning of a project, right? Where we can be super helpful and low cost too. Because if you look around for food science and formulation and product development, that can be super pricey from a lot of the bigger firms or the boutique firms.
So your focus really is, as you say, on companies that want to make a difference or make an impact. And really, that's why you're involved in the Alt Protein Show, because a lot of these companies that are making a difference today are in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a growing space. We have, 4 or 5 companies out of the 30 that are in Kitchentown that are, focused on that are, alternative protein companies, and that's, but yeah, it's definitely a major focus.
Of those 4 or 5 companies that are involved in alternative protein, can you give us more information?
Yes. So we do have several companies at Kitchentown in the facility that are focused on alternative protein. So we've got Lemoneo that makes a plant-based mayonnaise. We have Don Bagito that's working with insects. Siren Snacks, that is a protein-based snack company, a pea protein company, and quite a few others. We've had almond milk companies in since the early days, so a pretty good range. And then outside of the production space, we work with Sparrow very closely, that's developing an alternative egg protein, and quite a few others. Better Meat Co. has just joined Kitchentown in production. We're helping them to figure out production methods for using their meat extenders. So yeah, we're very involved in it and always looking for more companies to help in that respect.
It's interesting because protein is, simply put, a nutritional requirement. And given that the population growth continues to grow, and that we're at a crossroads right now where factory farming is not helping. In fact, it's hurting our environment. So you have 2 different branches. One is plant-based, the other is cellular agriculture. And those things together are kind of a combined effort to move the gap a little bit closer to actually something that can be scaled up and that can start to help replace some of these problematical practices.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting that we see so many companies sort of answering that call in really different ways. The company I was talking about earlier, Organic Pantry, with these flaxseed crackers, it's amazing how much protein is in those crackers. Better Meat Co. just taking the viewpoint that that not everybody is going to stop eating meat. But if you take that meat that they are eating and add 30 and make 30% of that a vegetable protein, and it still tastes just as good, that's huge. That's a huge impact. So, very different solutions. And this is what's so exciting today is that people just keep coming up with really creative solutions to this really big problem.
So food and technology are not strange bedfellows. In fact, when it came down to it after World War II, so much of our food came from the industrial military complex. We don't think about Twinkies and Cheerios as being, fashioned in a laboratory, but truly they kind of are. That said, this new food technology having to do with protein and nutrition has to find the right angle to exist. Simply put, people go to the grocery store and they buy hamburger meat or chicken and have no idea really how involved that is with factory farming. So this new food and technology to create both plant-based and cellular agriculture is a solution to a huge problem, but we need to think about it in terms of branding. It's one thing to talk about the technological aspects of the invention, the innovation, and all of that, but we really need to move it to the next phase where we tell the story and explain in transparent terms why something is good for the environment, why it's a better choice. It's kind of a wild frontier, and to put it together correctly is an art form.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and it's so important. Words are critical. How we talk about things and language is so important, and we've seen so many strides that have been made, and I think around this. So what we've seen in the last few years, and we're not even talking about it much more because we've made so much progress around it, is on menus, right? So instead of vegan products kind of being in that section of vegetarian and the language around those meals being around health, we're seeing all of that completely change, right? So we no longer see a separate section. We're seeing all of those menu items, in the main section, talking about how good they taste and how and describing them in that way. So that was sort of that first thing that happened, and that's amazing. But then also, around cellular meat, that's going to be another big challenge, right? How do we describe that? But I think that if we keep our focus on food and how delicious it is, and using adjectives around that, I think that generally people want to eat in a more healthy manner and eat in a sustainable way, and in a way that is that takes into account animal welfare too. So eating less meat, frankly, right, is going to happen regardless. But you're absolutely right. Talking about it in the right way is, means a lot. And I think that that's an evolving thing too, right? It may start in design firms and in marketing agencies, and we're all thinking about it. But ultimately, the consumer kind of tells us that. How to talk about that too. So,
Absolutely. Initially, when I encountered the concept of macrobiotic cooking and vegetarianism, there weren't many options. I mean, there was tofu and there was tofu. And as I explored further, my appetite for that changed, and so did the level with which recipes and innovations changed. Tempeh, fermented tofu, and then you had seitan, which is essentially vital wheat gluten. And all of these different things. It became a vocabulary, and now we have companies that are trying to make quick and easy things and that actually try to emulate the taste of animal protein, such as Impossible Burger and Beyond Burger. And that's going to capture the imagination of a lot of people once they try.
Yeah, no, but I think I mean it's all coming, and it's coming in droves. I mean, it's amazing what I've seen. I was on a trip to Europe last month, kind of on a tour of quite a few of the bigger cities, and to see what was going on in startup innovation. And in Switzerland, I think it was in Zurich, I stumbled on this meetup, food entrepreneur meetup, and they had like a potluck going on, and I was trying different things, and there was like a banh mi sandwich on the table, and it said, plant-based meat. And I tried it. I like pulled the meat out and I ate it, and it was so good. I mean, it was really amazing. The mouthfeel was great. Texture was great. Flavor was great. And so I had to find out who made this, what's going on here. And it turns out it was a couple of PhD students at the university there in Zurich at ETH, and they had developed this meat product from sunflower oil cakes. And so if you don't know what those are, that's the pulp that's left over from sunflower oil production, right? So when you squeeze the oil out of sunflower seeds, you end up with this pulp that's super high in protein and actually has a great flavor. It's a little gray because the seeds are gray. And so that's a challenge in some food applications, but for meat, it's really not a challenge at all. And so these guys had really developed this out into a really cool product. So, I mean, this is what we're finding. And so as these products come out and they're made from all kinds of different materials, we end up with a really diverse range of products that all are, taste really interesting and great. So, I'm obviously super optimistic and jazzed up about it all.
Yeah, and speaking of Europe, I hear that you have actually expanded into Berlin.
Well, yeah, that's actually already opened. So we have, it's our first sort of satellite Kitchentown in Berlin, and we've got a great team there. and working with a lot of partners already, including ProVeg, which is also a really cool group that's working on alternative proteins. We plan to continue to do that, and we can only do that with our partnerships. That's sort of our strategy, is really to kind of either wait for a partner to emerge that really wants to take the Kitchentown concept into another region, and then we work with them really carefully to adopt a lot of the methodologies that we've used and the know-how that we've experienced, to create a similar type of innovation hub in another region. So yeah, Berlin's the first one, and we're looking at other cities in Europe and in Asia.
Yeah, we were just curious as to why you chose Berlin for your first international satellite location.
Well, it sort of begins and ends with the partner, right? And so a partner emerged there, a big food company that said, look, we really want to do this. We think that what you've got going is great. And we think that the Berlin community, that the region can support it. It's a very entrepreneurial community. And there's a lot of diversity there. It's an inexpensive place to live. There are a lot of entrepreneurs. So it seemed to make sense to them and to us that would be a really good place for another Kitchentown. So it took a year to develop the whole arrangement and to launch it. So that's kind of why Berlin, because we had a great partner.
Rusty, how do you say Kitchentown in German?
You say Kitchentown.
Sounds like Kitchentown has grown by leaps and bounds. As you might remember, there used to be a thing called a Rolodex, and that would be a bunch of different pieces of paper that would go around kind of a cylinder. And if you were going to have that, you would look somebody up when you wanted to contact them and get their phone number. These days, it's a little different, and I'm cool with that. But if you still had a Rolodex, how full would it be?
I can tell you, because we have a resource guide, and that's not including all of the startups, but it's over 1,000 different firms, companies, individuals, investors that we work with on some level. So it's a huge number, and it's just growing, especially as we grow internationally, and that becomes really interesting. Yeah, that number just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it's really cool about about sort of growing globally is that each of these regions has a real have differences. I mean, cultural differences, food tastes that are different, just different special sciences, different universities, and so you get to tapping into those, and it's not just us tapping in, right? It's the ability of all of our partners to tap in, whether startups or larger food companies, or different service providers. So all of those, I mean, that's really the power of the whole thing. Ultimately, is building that huge global network. And so, yeah, the number's big. It's a big Rolodex.
Yeah, that's a lot of contacts for sure. I suppose that it makes sense because you need to have the specialization for the particulars that are involved in whatever kind of food technology there is. I mean, you can't have somebody who's a specialist in starch talk to somebody who's a specialist in botany, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. I mean, food is highly specialized. So yeah, you need a half a dozen independent packaging experts that are because they all have a different level of expertise. And the same thing on the food science side, the same thing in design. Really across the board, you've got there's a lot of sort of expertise that's siloed away, and or different experiences that people have. So you want to tap into all of that.
Yeah, and speaking of experts, it's going to be great to see everyone at the show, meet a lot of different people who are experts in different fields, and really learn a lot about the different facets of this industry. So really looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to it too. Of course, it's the first time that the Alternative Protein Show will be, in San Francisco, and there'll be so many people there. We're attending with our partner DSM, which is an expert in nutrition, selling vitamins and minerals and enzymes, and they have tremendous science behind this, and it's something that most startups don't have access to, that kind of expertise. So we're looking for a great show and connecting with a lot of different people that we don't know, and folks that can offer the right resources at the right time for all the startups that are interested and that are working on these projects.
Yeah, it's going to be science meets food, and then it's also going to be Brandfirst meets Rusty.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right. Will do. I'll put on my best show.
Awesome. So yes, once again, the show is January 15th through the 17th, with the actual show itself on the 16th in San Francisco in January. Coming up.
Thanks so much, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Rusty. And once again, this has been Diana and Alex from Brandfirst interviewing Rusty Schwartz from Kitchentown. If you would like to know more about the Alternative Protein Show, visit altprotein.show.
That's right. And if you would like more information about Brandfirst, we can be found at brandfirstnj.com.
Hope you enjoyed the podcast. See you next time.
Bye.